When a wife began to miss a new sensation in bed, she decided to try something new, but what she did shocked her husband and changed their lives forever. Details and fascinating stories of cheating and romantic adventures. Roman was 33 when he met Masha. Practically yesterday's student, 22-year-old Maria, melted at the attention of a grown man. She liked the way he was courting, that he could afford much more than her peers. She was the first to talk about marriage, and Roma gave in to her entreaties. 33 years old is a good time to settle down, he thought. 8 years flew by like one day. Together, the couple have been through a lot and have seen a lot. All this made their marriage even stronger. But time changes everything, even if we don't notice it ourselves. Maria was bored with the monotonous family life. She wanted to experiment, and she began to propose to her husband to bring something interesting and unusual in their intimate life. At first, Roman agreed to everything. He liked Masha's Zader and the idea. But after a couple of years, her suggestions became more and more sophisticated and strange. And so when she suggested inviting another couple to their bed, Roman yelled at her and asked her not to say such things in front of him in the future. His wife apologized and said she understood. Earlier, Roman was glad that he and Masha have a full understanding. But after this incident, it seemed to him that his wife was drifting away from him. Time after time, he asked if everything is all right, and his beloved, with a slight smile, answered him that he was tired for the day or loaded with some working thoughts. He noticed that his wife was spending more time on the phone, again referring to work. But when her husband approached her, Masha tried to put the phone with the screen down. This alarmed Roman. Once he purposely stayed up late in front of the television. He decided to wait until Maria fell asleep to secretly break into her phone and see what interesting things she was doing. He was not satisfied with his wife's abrupt change in behavior. He did not find anything suspicious in social networks or messengers. But then he saw an application with an unusual icon in the corner of his desktop. Clicking on it opened to him a whole world of virtual dating. Roma was taken aback. Could it be that Masha was so offended by him that she decided to cheat on him? He had not expected that. Wandering around the app, he opened the dialogues and saw the correspondence of his wife with other people, often couples, who invited her to be the third. Nothing in the messages suggested that meetings actually happened. Roman felt as if he had been hit over the head with a sack. He didn't know what to do with this information, and so he just minimized all the apps he had opened and put his phone back down. After he learned these details about his spouse, Roma tried to communicate with her as usual so as not to give himself away. But it turned out of hand. Every now and then he flew out of the art any barbs and sharpness to somehow hurt Maria. Masha took offense at this, and they could not communicate for days. He was happy with this situation because he was always wondering what to do and how to figure out if Masha was really going to all these meetings or if they were just not getting on with each other anymore. Everything was solved one night when Maria, having warned us that she would be spending the night at her friend's house, left. Roma understood that his wife did not go to her friend. She had never, in all the years of their marriage, stayed overnight anywhere. She always said it made her uncomfortable. He, of course, asked why she had suddenly changed her mind. And Maria replied that her friend had problems in her personal life and she wanted to support her. Roma did not interrogate further. His wife did not return home until the next evening in high spirits. "Is everything all right?" smiled her husband. "Ah, yes, fine," replied Masha. He wanted to hear something more, some details about what happened at her friend's place. After all, Maria had always shared such things with him before, considering him the closest person. But now she did not continue the conversation and went into the bathroom. Roma, with all his anger, squeezed the plastic milk bottle so hard that it cracked and the white liquid poured out on the floor. While the man was cleaning up the spilled milk, in his head he was actively trying ideas on how to catch his spouse cheating. She had taken her phone with her into the bathroom. And now Roman had no access to the information. But he'd again waited until Masha was fast asleep and opened the ill-fated dating app. His gut was right. His wife had indeed gone to see a couple. Tonight, just after Maria had returned home, these people were writing her enthusiastic messages about a good time and inviting her to visit them again. Roma gritted his teeth. He thought he was going to get steam coming out of his ears. This was the state he was in. He found the address she was supposed to come to in his messages and wrote it down for himself to check it out. It turned out to be a private house across town. The man decided that the next time Maria went to spend the night with a friend, he would drive up to that house to see it for himself. There was no need to wait long, and in a couple of weeks, his wife announced her desire to sleep away again. Roma agreed, wishing her a good evening. He calculated the approximate time of Masha's arrival at her destination and drove out too. The wife's car was parked outside that couple's house from the appendix. The man stopped a little further away, wondering what to do next, whether to knock on their door, shout under the windows, or stand there all night, waiting for Maria to come out. A light came on in the windows on the second floor, and he saw the outlines of two silhouettes there. One was helping the other to undress, and by the shadow of the curly hair, Roma realized that one of the silhouettes was his beloved wife. More than anything in the world, he wanted now to break into that house and have a showdown there. But he knew that the owners were likely to call the police, and he did not plan to deal with the authorities, and it would not be appreciated at work, so the question remained open. He sat in the car for a while longer. The lights in the windows were out of gas, and from time to time someone's shadows flashed. Roma was tired and cold, and angry as hell. He decided to try to get inside after all. The man rang the doorbell for so long that his finger got tired of pressing the button. Finally, the door boiled open and a head emerged. The man's voice shouted for Roman to stop clowning around and go away, or they would call the police. Roman shouted back that he didn't want any trouble, but just wanted to see his wife. There was a pause, and the gate opened automatically. The stunted owner of the house appeared before Roman, who looked as if he were 10 years older than himself. He genuinely wondered how Masha, a young and beautiful woman, had fallen for such a thing. He shuddered at the image that arose in his mind. It became disgusting. "I want to see Maria," the guest said firmly. "Her card is standing outside your house." "Roma?" He heard his wife's voice, and then she herself appeared from behind the door. He looked at her, dressed in a silk combination and bangs, brightly painted, and did not recognize his wife. A strange woman was looking at him. "Go home," her husband told her harshly. "You have 15 minutes. I'm waiting here." Maria nodded and soon returned to him dressed and carrying a small gym bag she had taken with her. Apparently her things for those changes of clothes were in there. When they returned home, the couple argued so much that at one point, the neighbors started banging on the radiator to calm them down. Masha screamed that it was her husband who pushed her to take this step when he reacted sharply to her proposal. "I wanted to do everything with you. I asked you, and what did you?" Her words echoed. Roman didn't understand how his refusal could have provoked him to cheat. He believed that a normal man in a marriage would never, for such foolishness, go left. He himself would never do that. "I'll sue you for everything. Your apartment, your car, you'll be left on the street." That's the last thing his wife said to him. After these words, she grabbed her bag again and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door forcefully. The neighbors knocked again. Roma sat down on the sofa, exhausted, and sat like that for a long time, staring at one point. He had no doubt that Maria would carry out his plan. Her father was a lawyer and helped her do it. After the divorce, Roma was left with his car and a small portion of the money his former father-in-law had given him for the apartment. The man was very angry. The only thing he knew about his ex-wife was that Masha never got married again, having gone to all sorts of trouble. Her friend once told Roma that Maria had started dating more than just couples, but he asked her never to mention her ex-wife or what she was doing again. He was disgusted at the thought of his once beloved woman doing such things now. He didn't want to hear any more about her. The only thing he wanted was to forget it all like a bad dream. Second story. He thought his wife was just busy and couldn't answer messages. But when he went to see her, he saw something that changed their lives forever. Roman was 48 when he first got married. His girlfriend's name was Natasha, and she had just recently turned 30. Many dissuaded Roman from marrying her, frightened by the age difference. They said Natasha was of a different generation and had different values. But Roma always shrugged it off. He honestly did not understand what differences there could be between him and Natasha, because he enjoyed every moment they spent together. And in principle, the fact that a young, hot wife was waiting for him at home excited Roman's mind. They met in a cafe. Roma was having lunch there with his business partner, and Natasha was drinking coffee with her girlfriends. Roma immediately noticed the bright and free Natasha and asked her to meet him. And so the relationship began to spiral. At first it was a shy courtship, flowers and night walks around town. Roma felt young and full of strength again. Natasha fueled him with her energy, and it seemed to Roma that he was able to move mountains. Only if she smiled for him and held his hand. Natasha worked in the recruitment department. No matter how much Roma persuaded her to quit her job, she refused because she didn't want to depend on him. In the morning, Roma watched his wife get ready for work. Her tanned body looked incredibly attractive. "Yesterday, I interviewed the guys for our team," said Natasha, buttoning the button on her jeans. "Already today, someone has to start work." Roma loved the way his wife talked about her work. She did it with great love and interest. "Let's go out tonight," he suggested. That was a good idea. Natasha kissed her husband and left for work. In the evening, he picked her up and together they went to a restaurant. They went out all the time, and Roma noticed the judgmental looks that people around them threw at them. But he was proud of his wife's youth and charm. "How was your day?" the employee asked Roman. Just at that moment, a hot meal was brought to them. There was steam and an appetite-exciting aroma from the dish. Their conversation proceeded as usual. They enjoyed their time together, the delicious food, and the beautiful live music. Roma stroked his wife's leg under the table, and she looked at him with a groggy smile on her lips. Over the course of several months, Roman noticed changes in his wife's behavior. She became more gentle, affectionate, and attentive. In the evenings, she began to cook at home more often than to offer to go out. He even jokingly asked her if she had a lover. "Natasha, it's as if you're making amends." Roman enjoyed his tea after a hearty dinner. The wife, perhaps, shrugged her shoulders. "Roma, stop it, or you do not like it." "Silly, I am very happy." He walked over to his wife and put his arms around her. Their lips joined in a kiss. Natasha's phone was constantly bursting with messages. She read them, turning the screen so that her husband could not see them, though she had never done so before. When Ronan asked, she answered that it was work-related, that they were in a rush, and she needed to be in touch at all times. One evening, Natasha was late at work, so her husband decided to pick her up. Roma rushed to pick up his wife by text message with a short text, "I'll be right there." Natasha read the messages, but did not respond. Roma waited for her downstairs, a little away from the entrance to their office. Finally, the doors swung open and out came two people, Natasha and a young man. Roma, from the height of his age, would even say, "Boy." They hugged each other briefly goodbye, their faces lit up with a smile. Roma became nervous, briefly, signaling he was waiting for his wife's reaction. Natasha turned around and waved him off. But a worm of anxiety was already settling inside the noddle. "Who was that?" he asked as his wife got into the car. "Colleague, you know, I told you, Renat. We took him and another intern in recently." Roma nodded. "Did you make friends with him?" "Yeah, He's uncomfortable in our company. He's still young. He's 19, can you imagine? Natasha giggled. Hearing that, Roma relaxed a little. Since his wife was reacting this way to this kid's age, he shouldn't worry. He pushed away the bad thoughts that had already colorfully painted the picture of adultery in Roma's mind. He had always had a particularly violent imagination, and that was clearly not good for him right now. Natasha began to linger at work more and more often. Roman did not always manage to pick her up, but when he did, there were always two people leaving the office, Natasha and Renat. This terribly pissed Roman off, but he tried not to talk about it with his wife. Once he had already provoked a major scandal with his suspicions, and Natasha went to live in a hotel for a week. Roma could not take that risk, and so he preferred to keep quiet and experience everything in himself. One summer evening, Roma came to pick up Natasha again and waited downstairs in the car for a long time. He had already discounted several messages, but his wife didn't even read them. Roma decided to go up to her office. He saw that the lights were on. Climbing the stairs to the third floor, Roma became more and more nervous with each step. And, as it turned out, not for nothing. His heart pounded hard in his chest as he crossed the threshold of the hall on the third floor. The door of the office where his wife worked was ajar, silent. Already listening, Roma noticed muffled moans and grunts. Abruptly opened the door, he saw his wife, kneeling in front of the very boy. It was obvious. The boy's pants were down, and his wife was sitting in front of him, topless. Renat, who had not expected such a turn of events, tried to put his pants on as quickly as possible. The woman continued to sit on the floor. She did not raise her eyes to her husband, only covered her exposed breasts with her hands. Roman crossed the room in one big step and grabbed Renat by the chest. The boy whimpered in fear. Roma raised his hand to strike, but suddenly Renat burst into tears, and Roma let him go. Feeling free, the boy immediately rushed through the door, and his hurried stomping on the stairs could be heard. What was wrong, Natasha? With a shiver in his voice, he asked his wife. You had everything. Roma, I don't know. Natasha had tears streaming down her cheeks. It was like a flood. I thought about him all the time, and then my wife started sobbing. Romashka, forgive me. The woman threw herself at him and hung around his neck. Roma wrapped his arms around her and held her close to him. Both cried from the surge of emotion. Natasha from shame, and Roma from the pain of betrayal. His wife kissed his cheeks and kept whispering, forgive me, forgive me. Rowan tried to forgive his wife, and for another 6 months they lived, boiling in constant scandals. Because in fact, he could not forget the betrayal. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that picture. His wife on her knees and Renat with his pants down. When Roman was fed up with it in the end, he asked Natasha to move out and filed for divorce. Once upon a time in his youth, Roman dreamed of buying a big dog, a nice car, and going on a trip. And he realized that now was the moment when he could do it. The wounds of a broken marriage had not yet healed, and it is unlikely that he will dare to build a new relationship anytime soon. After the final breakup with Roman, Natasha worked for some time in the same firm, and later moved to another city where she had her second marriage, which also ended in divorce despite the birth of a child. Then she even got together for a short time with Renat, who followed her to the new city, but their relationship fell apart before it had even begun. No matter how painful it was to realize it, the woman was left alone, and there was obviously justice in that. Natasha betrayed the man who loved her deeply, and fate decided that she no longer deserved such love. That's such a life story. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters.